I want to welcome you to this extraordinary General Staffing Committee meeting. Obviously, we all know the single content, basically, of what we're looking at, and we haven't any members of the public having a look at us, have we, Rich?
Nope.
No. Thank you. And I think we've a full house as far as we're concerned, by the look of it, haven't we? So that's great.
Councillor Sweeney's not here.
Ah, okay. Well, we'll carry on. You can join us as and when. Yeah. So there's no public question time. Right, clearly, nobody here. You've no apologies at all, Rich?
No.
No, thank you very much. Consider items on the agenda should be discussed in private session. Well, the biggest part of that.
I don't think there's any need for that.
No. So we shall be doing that as the meeting progresses, obviously. Members' personal and disclosable pecuniary interests in items on the agenda. Have we anything? Nope. I appear to have vanished.
We can hear you, Trevor.
All right. Well,
Yeah, we can hear you.
That's good enough.
So just soldier on.
Yep. I've obviously pressed the wrong button somewhere along the line. Okay, to receive any officer's pecuniary interests in items on the agenda.
I don't think so.
No. Okay, thank you. And then looking at written requests for new DPI dispensations.
We've had
None of those. Thank you very much. Minutes to note, please. Staffing committee on the 8th of February, numbered 2021-16 to 2021-28. They've been through the full council.
Trevor,
so we just to note those, please.
Trevor, can I just raise one query about that? On the item 24 on that, it says
Yes.
employment of the climate emergency coordinator, and then the resolution. I've just noticed that it talks about the deliberations of the climate emergency committee will be presented to full council for ratification, which is presumably for approval of the continuation of the post. I'm conscious we've had a full council since then, but given it was the week immediately after the climate emergency, there wouldn't have been time.
Yeah, that didn't. Yeah, okay.
I just want to make sure that there's a note made somewhere that does need to come to full
Right.
council, so
Yeah, that's noted, and that will be done. Rachel.
I know that Councillor Davis was going to prepare something for April, I think. Is that right, Paul? You were going to do
Yeah, that was the intention. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for the next one. Yep. I'll make sure that's done. Myself and Michelle and Liz have been having those discussions as well in terms of the sort of performance, etc. So yeah, that'll be pulled together. But then
I was just conscious that the next full council isn't until 10th of May, so we just need to make sure that happens on the 10th of May.
Yeah, it will.
To being too close.
No, thanks. Yeah, no. Yeah, thanks for raising it. Definitely, we need to do that, so it will happen then.
Yeah. Right. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Anything on that one, please?
Right, actually, sorry, one final question is just Councillor Sweeney was obviously looking at workload assessment. He's not here tonight, but I just wonder if anyone knows how he's got on with that.
He met with us today. We had a meeting today, and he's going to bring some suggestions. I was expecting him here tonight, to be honest, but I know he's got some suggestions about what to do next in terms of some way of auditing the work levels that we've got, basically. But unfortunately, he's not here to pass that on. But I think he was going to talk to you, Chair, about that.
The reason I ask is, do we know if it involves any suggestion that the role of the clerk in terms of hours or duties was going to change? Because obviously that's pretty fundamental to what we're looking at tonight. So.
I don't think he'd got that far, to be honest.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah,
You're back,
thank you.
Kevin.
Right, thank you. So are we, we're okay with that? It doesn't fundamentally affect what we're talking about later on, I don't suppose. We'll manage. And obviously, the item 36, to consider the resignation of the clerk and forward planning for the advertisement, interviewing and appointment of a replacement clerk. That's the point we're at now, and we've all had sight of 7 documents relating to the appointment of said clerk and various aspects thereof. Have you all had sight of those job descriptions, etc., etc.? And the first one on that list, number 1, is the clerk's job description, taken from NALC recommendation, looking at their document. And has anybody picked anything up on that which we need to talk through? Or are we? Yep.
Yeah, I
Go ahead.
think it's already mentioned on the. Oh yes, it is. Yeah, that it's got the climate emergencies at the bottom in red, isn't it? So we need to add the management of that. And the other thing is, oh no, that's fine. No, it does talk about the monitoring the work of the designated responsible financial officer. Yeah, that's fine. So that was the only thing I was going to pick up.
Okay, thank you.
Trevor,
the
point I was going to make is I wasn't sure of the status of the NALC document, because I can see we've got our own, the second document is our job profile, which I'm assuming is our version of the NALC one. So do we send the NALC thing as well, or do they duplicate each other, or do we need to refresh our profile if there's stuff that's not included that's on the NALC? Because it looks just like it's a document that Liz has just scribbled on the top of. No offense to Liz, but I'm not sure if that's actually part of the recruitment pack, because you basically got two documents from 2 different authors, one from us and one from NALC. So I think if we are going to send something, we need to send something with our name on it that probably references some of the stuff in the NALC. But I don't know what happened last time. So that was my question, really. I just didn't know what I was looking at.
Right. Well, there's 1 or 2 people want to speak on that. I'm not sure who was first.
I think Pat was before me. Go on, Pat.
Go ahead, please.
I agree with Doug's. I think there should be, in the recruitment pack, they shouldn't both go in. It should be one from us, and it should incorporate the things we want from the NALC one. And just, people don't need to see 2 documents that are almost alike but not quite. It'd be very confusing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Certainly, I think it's one document. I think the one that's dated going back to 2017, I think it is, and there are Home Valley Parish Council, for me is far too detailed anyway. I think the list there, is we don't need, that's basically, it's almost telling the clerk when to open the door and shut the door, when to do that. So, but it might be worth an exercise of reviewing that to see if there's anything missing from the NALC one. But from my perspective, I think the NALC one is pretty good, and we can. I certainly wouldn't have any problems with using that. But yes, it should be just one. I agree.
Right. Okay. Mary.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
More or less to echo what Paul has said. I think the Home Valley Parish Council version is incredibly detailed. I mean, job descriptions are not usually that detailed, and it's also it needs looking at, because it's mentioned about assisting with the asset transfer of the civic hall on there. So I think it needs a good look at and editing.
Right. Thank you for that. Rachel, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think the reason Liz has included that in the pack of information was she just said that the NALC description is kind of a good overview, but the more detailed one was one what she said to me anyway, that she looked at when she first started and thought, look at all those things I've got to do. And then the length of time that she's now been doing it, she's realised that actually it probably does reflect the breadth of things that need to be done. So I think it's, but that's not to say that we need to put that level of detail into the job description, because you wouldn't expect them minutiae. I mean, most job descriptions, let's be honest, are fairly high level, because you know the needs of the role will change as they go along. It's the key responsibilities that are the issue. But the now document in our pack is just a scan of something, and it feels like we ought to, at the very least, kind of rebadge it as
Oh,
Home Valley Parish Council is the Clark thing. And I may have missed it before, but didn't you just say about the fact the climate emergency coordinator post was in that now document? It's not, but there's reference to employee.
Yeah, it's at the well, it's the final page of the pack, isn't it? Or penultimate page, page 12. Yeah. Basically, it looks like it's. I'm sure Liz has just put in. She's put in red. Need to add management of climate emergency coordinator.
Yeah,
that's on page 12. I agree, Rachel. I think absolutely we should review this and put it in. Add or change whatever you want to do, and then rebadge it as ours. I think overall, it's a very good. I think the NALC for me is the sort of framework we should look at. Otherwise, I think whoever looks at whoever would look at that full job description and still apply for the job would be. I don't think there would be many, but your point's well made. Things change over time, and what you need are the key responsibilities in key areas, and then the detail of that is something that evolves within the role and the discussions with us as a council as well, isn't it?
Okay, thank you for that. Welcome, Joe.
Really sorry I'm late. I'm having
no problem.
My internet. If I go, I'll be back.
Right. So, are we in some sort of agreement then to review of the current options can be sought within a short length of time, and we'll come up with one that suits all purposes.
I was going to ask Trevor, should we, with that in mind, should we look at sort of just having a small subgroup to do that? To facilitate that, 2 or 3 people to look at it, perhaps.
That
would
sounds
probably help, wouldn't it?
Yeah. If we look at, can we look for three possible candidates, volunteers for that task, please? We've got Pat and Mary and Rachel. It's a ladies' meeting.
Oh, you beat me to it. I was going to put my hand up.
I've dropped my pen.
Of course you were. Of course you were.
Michael dropped his pen.
All right. It's all right.
Oh gosh.
Full confidence.
Oh,
Yep. So
only girls talk
Yep.
about important.
Yep. So thank you very much for that. So we'll now look at item 2. This is the clerk's job description approved by council in 2018. So this is just what we've been saying. That's the So we've absorbed item 2 in the last discussion. Yeah. That's fine. 3, the application form. Any strong thoughts on that one, please?
Just a quick one, Trevor.
Yes.
In some ways, I think it's helpful, but a lot of candidates will already have produced their own CVs, which actually covers a lot of the first couple of pages, really. I'm not sure really about driving licenses, and there's some things I could question on it. But I just wonder whether we'd accept CVs in lieu of that, or whether we want people to actually fill in this form. In some ways, it's easier if people fill the form in, because you can compare like with like, whereas if you've got CVs, you're scratching around trying to find employment history and qualifications. But it just seems quite commonly now, you just ask to submit a CV and a letter of interest, really. I just wonder what people's thoughts were, whether we need a form like this.
Yes. Any comments on that, please? Mary, your hand's up, please.
Yeah, I strongly believe we shouldn't accept CVs. I think we need to use the job application. I mean, that's standard practice, isn't it, in local government and schools and the public sector generally. So I think no CVs.
Yeah, okay. Michael, your hand up, please.
Yeah, I would prefer the application form. I'm not a fan of CVs because often it's a case of who's got the money to pay a professional to do the CV for them. So I much prefer someone to put in fill in the application form. But that's just my opinion and experience.
No, that's fine. Thank you. Paul, go ahead.
There is the other option as well. They fill in the form, and if they so wish, they can attach their CV if they wanted to.
Yeah.
So and that's quite common as well. I haven't got a strong view, but sometimes on a CV you might get something extra as well. But I agree the form is essential. I would agree the form is essential.
Yeah. Well, what you've just suggested is what I was going to suggest, was that perhaps we give candidates the option of one, certainly ours, and a second option of their own CV if they so wish. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think only if it's in addition to. I think that's what people are saying.
Yeah, in addition.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Some people have got some really nice CVs, but I would question why we're asking for driving license groups and expiry dates and lists of endorsements. I've never seen that on a job application, particularly when I can't think of any need for the clerk to drive, if I'm honest. I can't see it's not as if they, Richard might correct me, but I mean, you may choose to drive, but I don't think there's a need for you to drive to do the job, is there?
I don't think so.
No. Pat, go ahead, please.
Liz has occasion. I mean, certainly Liz drove to Honley to get signatures from Michael and I on approval to expenditure type forms at one point, but there would have been ways that we could have gone there, you know.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts on that one? Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, I think when Liz has used the car, I think it's when she's gone above and beyond what's kind of required, isn't it? You know, I think we could have got around doing that. Only a slight concern is that currently we have one place of work when we all get back to meetings and what have you. I suppose they may work from home or they may work at the civic hall. If we ever have meetings elsewhere around the place, then we'd have to get there. But I don't think anything that is above and beyond. If you have to pay someone's bus fare or taxi in such occasions, then I think we should have to do it. I would hate for someone to be put off going forward for the job if they were a really good candidate because they didn't have a driving license.
Yeah. Okay.
Agree.
Yes, I was just thinking in terms of. I wonder if that's being added in with looking at the potential for attending training courses, etc., or attending another council meeting on behalf of this council. Perhaps not, but I've no particular axe to grind on that one, whether it's on or not. I think it's perhaps not. I think really I'm in favour of not having it on, but yeah. Have we any feelings on that to keep it on? You know, having said I prefer it not to be on. Can we look at taking it off then? Is that all right?
Yeah, it's fine.
Yep. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yep. Good point, thanks.
Now then, the person spec. Have we had a chance to look through that one? Where are we?
I think again
Yeah, Rachel, go ahead.
I was just going to say because Liz sent this on to me and said it was the person spec that, whilst it says deputy clerk and RFO, was basically exactly the same for the clerk. So that's why it's, because obviously the title isn't appropriate since we're recruiting a clerk. But so I think it's, I mean, I see no particular reason of, I mean, I think the crosses were all in the same places, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah,
So we need to review that when we look at the job description. It makes sense to do it at the same time. 'Cause it's-
yeah. To go through it at leisure. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I can see the potential in that one, and perhaps alter small elements of it as that goes by. Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, the only thing I would pick up at this stage, and obviously you can pick up when you do the job description, is the issue of qualifications, isn't it? Because as we know, when we brought Liz on, she didn't have any qualifications. So I think ideally we want somebody with the relevant qualifications, but are we saying that we would exclude people if they didn't? Because it's saying essential against the ILCA.
It's
So-
not. It's not.
No, it's not.
No. Oh,
But willing to work towards.
Yeah, that was the point I was going to make, Trevor. I thought
Oh,
that
is an or. Sorry. Yeah. Apologies. I didn't see the or. Yep. Okay. That's fine.
yep, fine.
But Trevor, on that one, can I suggest that we split that, because it's a bit of an odd thing to have either holds it or willing to work. I think you could have either holds it is desirable and willing to work towards it,
essential.
under the quality is essential.
Yeah,
So
an essential.
into two. If you split the table into two, it
Yeah.
makes it clearer, I think, because
Yeah, I
some
agree.
people might
Yes.
misread that and not realise
No.
that.
Yeah. Are we okay with that, Richard? Did you pick the gist of that one?
Yep.
Okay. All happy with that then, please?
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Thanks for that, Doug.
Trevor,
And-
I've got one more comment as well on it.
Yeah, go on.
When other requirements, it says available to attend occasional evening meetings. I think we should say
Yeah.
2 to 4 a month, because it actually is, isn't it? You know,
Yeah,
the
it should.
reality.
I think it should say constant evening meeting.
Yeah.
I think we could be more honest about that, really.
Yeah.
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 It could
Okay.
be available
Yeah.
to attend your
Yes.
home life
Meetings.
occasionally.
Yeah, that most certainly gives the wrong impression, doesn't it? Yeah. So,
I mean, I think we should be really open about this to make it clear that it's most weeks, once a week.
yeah,
Yes.
We,
okay, yeah,
Yeah. It's weekly, isn't it? I think you just put, as
Yeah.
Rachel said, weekly. Yeah.
yeah. Does that gel with everyone? Are we happy with that? Yep. Thank you very much. And national pay scales. Well, quite clearly, we've all seen a vast array of options on the pay scales, and that very much depends on the candidates we're looking at, doesn't it? As to qualifications, experience, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So that, yeah. Go ahead, Rachel.
can I just clarify something? Because my understanding is that our current clerk is on 31, I think, and Rich is on 29. Is that right, Rich? Do you know? That's that.
It's something like that. I could look it. I could look it up.
Well, the Sally Barber job description says 25 to 30. That's what it
Does,
actually
yeah.
said in that document.
So is it basically saying that it's the role? Let's see. How do we know what benchmark we are? What should we be? If we have someone who's inexperienced, given the size of the council and its responsibility, what level is it?
Right.
Trevor, there are a couple of people wanting to speak.
Yeah. Right. Pat, go ahead.
Well, Michael was before me.
Oh, right, Mike. Right. Reverse
Yeah.
rules.
I mean, sort of systematically, I would look at what's the top that we would pay someone who was absolutely 100%. They'd worked at other councils before, they'd done the exact same job, a council the same size, and everything had ticked all the boxes, and we're over the moon to get them, and we'd be stupid to turn them away kind of candidate, you know, that's got full experience in the role and doing it.
Okay.
What would the most we would pay them? I think that's your top line, because that's what you would pay someone of that, yeah. And then look to where, then work back from that. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
And then you've got a bit of kind of structure to what you're looking at.
Okay. Any other comments on that one, please? And we'll go back to Pat.
Yeah, and I think we need to think about whether we would realistically wish to have a clerk earning less than a deputy clerk.
Yes.
And I'm not saying yes,
Yeah.
so
okay.
no, I think we have to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Michael's idea is a good one, and you know, we've got a little bit of a benchmark, haven't we? That we've got Liz, who's been working, you know, over the last 2 years, has been getting herself to that position of being a full clerk, and we are paying, I think, accordingly. It may be that we look a little bit higher than that, as you say, Micah, for somebody who's got all the qualification, who's got the experience, but we've kind of got, at least where we are now, as Rachel said, that's sort of what we're paying Liz. I would guess there may even be a bit of a top up to that, because if we've got that ideal candidate who's got qualifications, who's done the job X years, etc. But you know, I think we'd have to stipulate that, wouldn't we? And then you have got the bottom end. It's the point that you're raising, Pat. Yeah, it is a little bit of a dilemma. Hopefully we've got somebody who isn't, you know, without the relevant experience, that we can put them on a, you know, either a similar part to Rich, or, you know, coming in. I guess we can't exclude the fact that it may be, we don't know yet, that that's not the case, and there is actually somebody who in reality is kind of junior, even more junior than Rich in that sense. It's a difficult one.
Okay.
Sorry, Rich.
I've just checked the scales that me and Liz are at. So I'm at 27 and Liz is at 30. So Liz is at 33,782, though that's full time, of course, and she's 25 37ths of that, and I'm 25 37ths of 31,346.
Right.
Trevor, I think
Okay.
there's on the point that I made and then Paul elaborated on.
Yes.
We could end up with a really weird situation, and whether it was Rich or another person, and please, Rich, assume that you are just a deputy clerk, not you, where our new clerk came on at less than Rich, became like reasonably say, hang on a minute, I've been here for years, what's going on?
Okay. Yeah. Mary, go ahead.
The clerk is the line manager of the deputy clerk, so must be on a high grade. But we have a little more leeway than was said originally, given the information that Rich has given. You know, there's a couple of points there.
Yes.
And I would suggest that we specify a range, as already been suggested, but perhaps just have one empty point above Rich, and put the clerk at the lowest point on the next one, which would be 30.
Yeah.
Going up to whatever people think is reasonable for somebody who's got everything. But we're very unlikely to get somebody.
And do people understand how these scales work? Because I'm not entirely sure. Is it that you go up one level for every 1 year of service?
Yes.
Is that how it works?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you need more, training to take yourself to a different level, essentially. So you would go up a level if you've got the Silker or something, some professional qualification.
Okay.
It can be a mix of, you might get a qualification that might take you to a higher level. You may take on staff underneath yourself, right. So you've got more responsibility. so you would take on another level, or it may be a large increase in your financial responsibility. So, for instance, if as you as a financial officer, our finances went from over 300,000 a year to £1 million a year, you might say, well, I've got financial responsibility for so much more now. So there's a few factors that you could argue would go up. Or that's my understanding of it when I'm arguing these things at work.
Okay. Paul, you're
yeah, just go back to the point Mary said. I agree. Ideally, the person we recruit would have, the right skills, the right experience, qualifications, etc. And there's no issue in terms of the scale. Then isn't that does happen. But I can think of a number of times in my previous career when I was managing people in my team who were earning more money than me because I was young. I was starting my career, and it's not unusual at all to be in that situation. And I'm not saying we will be in that situation, but it could be. I don't think we should exclude it. That's all I'm saying. We should have a scale which takes account of that. That's all. Hopefully not.
Yeah. Right. Doug, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I think this. I think we need to sort it out. We need to be clear on the job description what the range is. Yeah. I'm not sure without checking Rich's job description. The one that we've got below the terms and conditions, it does say that you progress up each year and reviewed in April. It's 9.2 in the condition basically the job contracts. So that the existing contract says 25 to 30 with a yearly progress, but obviously we could start it at 28 to 32, or we could start at 28 to 30. I'd be minded to actually go with it as it is and just accept that, because there may be a really good candidate who's actually will grow into the post who we'd want to appoint, but hasn't. So, and we'd have to manage that situation, as Paul said, of having a situation where the clerk's paid less than the deputy. I don't think it's a deal breaker, really, although it is, in my experience in local government, that's quite unusual.
No.
Okay, thank you for that. Michael, will you next, please?
Yeah, I'd just like to sort of throw in, I've been in the civil service before I was local government, I was civil service, and I was managed by someone earning less than me, but that's just the way it works and what have you. His potential was much higher than mine, where he could actually go to. It was just at that point in time he earned less than me, but I'm sure a few years later he was earning far more than me. So his headroom was much higher than mine. He was on a graduate train. He was on a graduate program, so he was like put through as a graduate manager and managed me and the rest of my team, and we all had more money than him, but we knew he was going higher up. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. So clearly we've got to accept that as a possibility, haven't we? At some stage. Mary, go ahead.
I'd just like to say I'd be very much against that, because if this is a different situation, isn't it, from somebody who's a graduate trainee, and if the clerk was to find out that he or she was being paid less than the person that they are managing, I think I'd be pretty miffed about it. It would be very unusual practice, wouldn't it? In what effect we more or less go by local authority rules.
I don't think that's even a local authority rule. Actually, it's not even a local authority rule.
It's practice, but it's practice, isn't it?
It is practice, but it's not actually the hard and fast rules. And the other comment, Mary, is that the RFO would definitely know what the is getting paid. Not that they might find out. They will definitely know. They sort out paying their wages. So, but I think it's unlikely. But I wouldn't rule it out, and we'll cross that bridge when it comes to it.
Yeah. Is that what you're going to say, Paul?
Yeah, I was going to say exactly what Michael just said, and I think it's obviously not something that we look to do, but it may be, as you say, that the successful candidate has got some development to do. We know they've got the potential. We know they're the person, but to pay them, as a fully experienced clerk initially may not be appropriate, but hopefully that's not the case. Like I said, I think we would be aiming to find somebody where we could pay them that full rate. And it's certainly not with any intention of trying to skimp and trying to in any way underpay a person as well, because I think what you do in that case, you'd put in a very clear plan, which we would agree with them, whereby you could accelerate, you know, their progress, and you wouldn't even have to wait for the annual increments. We would look at putting in something which would give them that sight of moving, you know, up to a position fairly quickly, you know, if that's the case. But as I think Michael's right. I think it's not the most likeliest of outcomes.
If I can go back to Mary, please, does that pacify your concerns for the moment?
Well, it seems to be the feeling of the meeting, doesn't it? So I'll go with it.
Okay, thank you for that. So, Rachel, go ahead, please.
I'm going to say, so are we therefore going to say the range is 25 to 30 and specify what those figures are on a pro rata 25 hours a week basis? Are we still assuming 25 hours a week? Obviously, that's the same cost to the council as our current employee. Well, depending on their experience.
Yes, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Sorry, I didn't quite hear that bit. What you're saying, you're looking at a range of what? Sorry.
Well, the points 25 up to 30, because that's what was in the, so that
on the spine, yeah.
From a
okay.
Whatever the figure is, what is it? 29. Sorry, 25 is 28,785 up to 32,878. So that's the range, and then you put dependent on experience.
Mm.
But we just to clarify, are we definitely saying it's 25 hours a week, so pro rata?
Yeah.
We just need to make sure we're absolutely.
You are looking at the April. You are looking at the April 2019 columns there, Councillor. You're looking at the third, the third and fourth columns, really.
Right.
Yeah, sorry, I just the column on my screen.
Yeah.
Just in addition to that, I think that on the points starting at 25 is fine. I was just going to suggest maybe we'll push it up to 31 in case we get an outstanding candidate who actually is even more experienced than Liz. It's just in case if we've got that. But so I think that gives us quite a good, you know, 20. It gives us 6 points, doesn't it? 25 to 31. But I'm not hard and fast on that. I think it depends what people feel.
Okay, so are we comfortable with that as a concept? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's quite, you know, the difference in wages.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you very much. And sample contract of employment, which Doug's is on with that one. Thank you.
It's a question for Joe, really. Rachel just asked the question about hours. I know that you've just started a process because Rich said you weren't in the meeting. You had a chat with Rich and Liz this afternoon. I mean, I personally think we should, unless you've got some really major findings that you already know of that you think we need to increase those hours, I think we should start it at 25. But obviously, the review of the work that you're doing is quite critical, because I worry that we lost the previous clerk due to pressure of work. I also think due to council behaviour probably, but you know we can manage pressure of work. Hopefully we can manage council behaviour. I just wondered if you got any views, Joe, and whether you're happy that think for now is 25 the right point, 25 hours.
So I did meet this afternoon with Rich and Liz, and it was the start of a conversation. And part of the problem is deconvoluting the actual workload and working out what I guess benchmarking is the word that you want to use here. So what we spoke about at the end of the meeting was having someone to come in basically as an external auditor to look at the workload and to separate it into two parts. One, which you might consider core workload, which can only be done by a clerk because of the complexity, because of the sensitivity, and then additional workload, which might be workload that is either transient. So in other words, if you have to complete a task by a certain time for a certain purpose, say deposition of information on a website, that is relatively routine, so data entry, for instance. And I think it's going to take us a little while to actually understand what's going on here. I think what is clear is that, to my mind, all the clerks I've worked with, which is a few, have all worked outside their hours. So in other words, they're working for free. Now, whilst with any job, which is essentially a cognizant job, then where you have to use your brain, there's always going to be an element of that, and I think we have to accept that. But I think we have to minimize the additional workload that occurs outside hours. So my answer would be, I think we need to think about increasing the hours, but I would suggest that we do that further down the line after we've had some sort of external arbiter come in and have an objective look at the situation. Now, one of the things which occurred to me, and we can discuss this perhaps later, is that we might use Liz in that role. Now she's stepped down, and obviously she knows it inside out. But I do think we spoke, for instance, about having the auditor that we've recently used, who might be able to come in and do, it would kind of be like a cheap management consulting exercise, I guess. I think part of the problem is that the job has evolved into a far more complex beast than it ever was before. So, simply the number of committees that we have, prepare an agenda and papers for each committee that we have, takes an onerous amount of time, and much of that is not sensitive, I think, but I don't know for sure. And so this is where I think we need a real root and branch analysis. I don't think 25 hours is enough, but I don't know is the answer. Sorry, it's not much of an answer.
Thank you for that. I think Pat was probably first. I'm not really sure.
Right. I mean, I am concerned, and I think I agree with Joe what he's saying. I think we need to build into this contract, because it's a two-way process. I'm not sure we have been as careful as we might have been at ensuring a healthy life-work balance for the clerk and possibly for the deputy clerk too. And yes, people will do a bit more than their hours, but they should not feel that they ought to do a lot more than their hours. And when I send in, because I am a volunteer and I can work anytime I like, if I send in a query on a Sunday evening, I should not be getting answers back. We need to be quite firm about sticking to the days you work, sticking broadly to the hours you work, and having some sort of a chain of emergency numbers where, if, for instance, the toilet's back up on a day when neither Liz nor Rich work, it goes to whoever, the chair, whoever, but somebody can deal with it. But it should not be that people are dealing with phone calls in the evening or on their days off or when they're out for a walk or whatever. I feel very strongly that we've been a bit lax about this.
Okay, Joe, are you responding to that, please?
Yeah, I'm responding to that. I think one of the things there are two things we need to be concerned about. One is a duty of care that we have as an employer, and that is important. But the other is dignity of labour. And I think that to me is a really important point here, is that what we don't want is to take people who are able, but also committed, and then work themselves into the ground. Now, I think there was a word, you mentioned something about toilets, I think there. And actually, that's an interesting point, because if you look at Holmfirth compared to, say, Meltham, Holmfirth is a tourist destination, so toilets are significantly more important, and also because of the demographic of the tourist. So actually, there's a lot of information that we need to look at, I think. So what I mean is that you might get many more issues to do with toilets coming across the desk of a clerk in Home Valley than you might in Meltham. So I think this is where an external arbiter will be really useful in drilling down into that level of detail. But I think, and for instance, you might imagine that an administrative assistant could deal with an inquiry about toilets, whereas a clerk might not be needed for that. But I think the duty of care is the important point to come into what you're saying there, Pat, is that we really need to ensure that we don't allow staff to overwork in a way.
Mm-hmm. Now then, probably Paul, I think.
No, it's me.
Oh, it's Mary. Go on, Mary. You jump in.
Go on, Mary.
Yeah, I was going to mention the duty of care, because I'm not convinced that you know, as employers that we have, you know, we've taken enough regard to duty of care. I mean, it's an extremely difficult situation where you are the one or one of a very small number of people who are actually employed and being paid, and you're working essentially with volunteers, because we can do what we want when we want, can't we? And we will send emails at strange times. And I think we need to set something in place which stops people's self-exploitation. Is the, you know, for those people who are committed to the job, it's so difficult to back off. And I think we need to give careful thought to this. And I welcome Joe's idea of a kind of root and branch look at all this, but we need to put something in place. And I think we also need to put in place somebody like, when I was in a similar situation as the only paid employee with a load of volunteers, I had somebody who was a supervisor whom I used to be able to go to with difficulties, and acted as a you know, kind of moral support as much as anything else. So I think we need to take this carefully and slowly, if we can, because I think there's a lot that needs thinking through.
Right, Michael.
Yeah, not to I feel the meeting's gone slightly off topic. From what I can gather is there's a big piece of work to be done about how much, you know, whether the clerk and the RFO have got enough hours to do what they need to do, or if they don't want any more hours, they need additional staff. And that Joe's on with that. And I appreciate that. That's a very important piece of work and we need to discuss. However, I don't think we're going to resolve that tonight.
No.
And as an agenda item for tonight, we really need to, so is 25 hours enough for the clerk? And I think we can't say it's any more, and we can't say it's definitely not any less. I'm pretty sure on that. We can hand a night say not any less. But I don't think it's a role at this meeting to just stick a pin in the air and go, oh, we'll give them another 3 hours.
No.
I think we're gonna have to just do it on 25 hours and go with that, I think, and then move on the meeting, but without dismissing the work that Joe's doing and everything else that everyone else has said. I don't want to dismiss that, because I think it's all really valid contributions, but we could be talking until midnight on that role.
Yeah.
And it's really dealing with, and that doesn't help Liz at all if she's wanting to finish. Shows we really need to get focused on recruitment and get this sorted out.
Yeah. Okay. Paul.
I think that I'd agree. I think we should stipulate 25 hours. However, I think it would be very useful to check with candidates, or even to, I think it's probably more to check with shortlist candidates when we're interviewing them as to whether they would be, there is, to explain at that point, there is a review going on, and there is a possibility that, you know, hours may increase, they certainly wouldn't decrease, and therefore would that be an issue? Because what we don't want to be in is a situation where we recruit somebody for 25 hours, and then we do a review which finds we need more hours, and that person says, well, I'm sorry, I can only do 25, I can't do any more. So I think it would, that might be something that we have to just check with people, just in case there is an outcome from the work that Joe's doing, and obviously from any council decision. But I don't think we have to put that in the advert or anything. I think 25 hours is fine.
Yes.
In my view.
Joe, go ahead.
So I'd just like to say Paul has captured exactly what I said. So I started this by answering Doug's question about number of hours. My feeling is that we need to build in some flexibility, but I think 25 is certainly the minimum. One more thing quickly before we move on, I take Michael's point about this taking all night. I think one of the things we have to look at is the proportion of the budget that we use on salaries, because any organization, the majority of the budget is always spent on salaries. And I think cost is clearly an issue. We have to show fiscal rectitude, but I think it may be worth revisiting the overall salary burden and making an analysis in a separate meeting, perhaps at a full council meeting, about what proportion of our budget we think should be expended on staff costs, given the size of the budget and complexity. Okay, thanks.
Okay, I just wanted to say something about the role of that I'm doing, obviously at the moment, with regard to staffing. I've always made it my responsibility to talk to the clerk, usually at least once a week, to make sure that we are doing our bit towards treating our staff fairly and with dignity, etc. I've always taken that quite seriously, and I'm still doing it on a weekly, sometimes more basis if something's going on, and that I think is my response to how I work this role, basically, because other than an extraordinary meeting such as we're having now, the meetings of staffing are few and far between. So it needs a regular contact all the way through. Yeah, thank you for that. So where are we going with this one now? I know Joe's in the midst of his work, and I think by the look of it, we're all supportive of Joe and the work he's putting into it. Are we happy to leave it at that for the moment and take recommendations as they come?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that anybody object to that as an idea? Are we comfortable? Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for that. And we're now on to item 7 there, a sample job advert. And I'm sure we'll have one or two changes to what we've had previously, I think, anyhow. But has anybody looked at this and given it some serious thought, perhaps? Pull it in bits, start again, or just just tweak it up in little bits?
Well, we can tweak it, but it needs it does need change, doesn't it? Quite a bit of change, because this was Rich's role and the clerk's role is clearly different. You know, so yeah. So, and I think we've got, in terms of the job description, we've got the key overall responsibilities. I'm sure we can get something from the overall responsibilities to put an advert together, couldn't we?
Mm-hmm. But Doug's, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure where we actually advertise, because in some ways that dictates what we need to write, because I'm assuming we can advertise on the Kirklees Council's, or maybe access that. They've got a bulletin and a note as well as Kirklees jobs. In the past, they've done other jobs. We can clearly put it on Facebook. Yeah. We've got our own Facebook page. If you're paying per word for an advert in the Examiner, which I'm assuming isn't the way most people find jobs anymore, then we're in a different conversation. But we do need to have the core advert and the wording for that. But I guess my question's more about where did we put it last time and how did people find out? Because I don't actually know the answer to that question.
Okay.
I saw it on Home Firth Events, and I think that was where a lot of people saw it.
Right. Are you familiar with that one, Doug? The events calendar? Yeah. Okay. Rachel, go ahead, please.
I agree with the fact we need to advertise it ideally through Kirklees, but also Home Firth Events. But I do think we need to, ideally, we want someone who's a qualified clerk. So we need to get it through the clerk newsletters. And I know at the bottom of, I can't remember if it's the
White Rose update.
Yeah, there's just a table at the bottom that says current vacancies. They don't even say what the job is. They say clerk of X council, and then I can't remember whether they give the pay. Maybe they give the pay. I can't remember how many hours or something like that. But I mean, it's very, very limited. So I think we just need to tailor the information accordingly. But obviously, but that's to an audience that already knows what clerks do. Whereas obviously Home Firth Events, because I'm conscious that, you know, that there's quite a lot of people looking for employment currently, and if we're not specific enough in our job description, we will potentially get dozens and dozens and dozens of CVs or application. Obviously, the application form I think is quite useful because it forces people not just to submit a CV speculatively. At least people have to think about it and go to the trouble of filling in the form, which obviously reduces the number of people. I'm not saying we want to reduce the number of people to nobody, but I don't want us to have to wade through 50 application forms to struggle to find who to shortlist, because it is really time consuming. And I know to some extent with Liz and Rich, I know I wasn't involved in the process, but I don't think we had huge numbers of people to deal with. But obviously I'm conscious with the climate emergency coordinator and then with our other hats on. The land charity one, it was quite a big exercise. So we just need to be mindful of that in terms of making sure that the job description is specific enough and makes clear we're really seeking for someone who wants to work in that sort of administrative clerking environment, rather than just be seen as an office administrator, which potentially could open the floodgates to a huge number of people speculatively.
Fine, thank you. So are we, with regard to sorting a job advert out, are we wanting to do it collectively, or would it be better with 2 or 3 people concentrating on that one?
I think it's the same thing. 2 or 3 people.
Yeah. Okay. And equally, the thing tying in with that will be selecting a medium to advertise said sample on. That could stay with the same 2 or 3 people, would you think? Or certainly for we need to look for somebody who would fancy taking on that task, if that's feasible, with interest in those particular roles. Yeah, Doug, go ahead, please.
Again, it's just really a question of how I certainly agree it shouldn't be done by committee, and it shouldn't be done by tonight. It needs to be done by a couple of people. But I'd be minded to actually use the parish website and do a news feature story like Richard's done on other topics, because we can then send a link to that, and it gives us the opportunity in that article to say, you know, why we're looking for it, why it's important, what a lovely job it is, how important it is, all the things, and it can be a much more conversational tone, if you like, about the purpose of the role, and why it's needed, and the flexibility that's there. And I just think we can then very easily use that link, the web link, to put into, you know, emails that we send out on Facebook posts and other things. It just seems that just seems a much more modern way to get a conversation and people interested. But we do need to, as Rachel said, that needs to make it very clear that this is a serious job. It's not just taking notes at a meeting that anybody could do. So, you know, people need to be aware of the challenges of the job as well as the pleasures, perhaps. But I think you can do that in a web story easier than you can in an advert, perhaps.
Okay. Any other ideas on that one? Rachel, yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it kind of, I mean, to be honest, it should feed off the finalised job description, really. Yeah. That's what we need to reflect in it. Because one of the things I think is quite interesting about this particular job description is it doesn't actually reflect the fact you're working with councillors, which strikes me as quite, and the public, both of which are often the most challenging part of the role. So, I do think that the idea that Doug's has of having a sort of more kind of chatty description of what the clerks do is useful. But I think the job description and offers additional information for an applicant to look at. So I agree with that. But I think the sort of the sort of key paragraph really needs to fairly reflect the key points in the job description. So the fear of stretching the job that myself, Pat, and Mary carelessly put our hands up for earlier, it feels to me like it's probably the three of us who do that because it's all part of the same picture.
Yeah, I'd say I agree.
Sorry, Rachel, I missed the last bit. I think you were heading towards you 3 ladies taking this extra bit on. Was that what you said? Okay. What does Mary think about that?
Yes, sorry, I was just going to check that my understanding of what the group of 3 is going to do. So am I right in thinking that we're going to do, we're going to look again at the job description and at the person spec and at the advertisement. So those are our 3 key tasks. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thanks.
Are you comfortable with that? That's the main bit.
Certainly.
Yeah. Okay. Joe, your hands up. Go ahead, please.
Just wanted to quickly reiterate what Rachel said. I've just been, I'm sifting through applications for a job where we didn't get the job description right. We got 115 applicants, of which about 85 are not in any way qualified for the job, but we have to read them all. So we really need to get the job description very precise, because that should deter people. And I think we might even want to put negative things in and say, if you don't have this, don't apply. I'm actually not sure if we can do that legally, but I think we want to make it a really detailed job description so that we can realistically triage apart from anything else, because as Rachel said, it's a buyer's market in terms of employment at the moment.
Mm. Listening to what you've just said there, Joe, I can sympathise in one sense, but in a past life, I was part responsible for an advert going out for a part-time post, 15 hours a week, and we got 135 applicants. So clearly, we hadn't actually said what we wanted. But sorry. Paul,
as we just talking, I just thought I'd do a quick Google on parish clerk vacancies, and I'm quite surprised how many different sites there are that actually advertise parish clerks. Everything from sort of a smaller associations to there's actually something called ukindeed.com, which has a whole range of clerks. So yeah, it's probably going back to the point we said earlier on, what Rachel said, that is, and I'm sure you will do, that is certainly an area worth investigating, isn't it? Because there may well be, by the look of it, some more specialist sites that we can access for qualified and experienced clerks. So it does seem to be quite a few out there.
And I was thinking of the YLCA being a possible vehicle we could use. Yeah. Thank you. Anything else on that, folks? Have we? Go ahead, Rachel.
I'm just conscious that myself and Mary will go away and review the job description and a job advert, but we sort of need to agree then how we approve those as a committee, and then send the ad out, because we can either, we can approve in principle it's based on what we discussed today, and then just circulate by email amongst the committee for any comments to avoid having a face-to-face meeting. But we need to be clear if we're doing that, because I don't want to have a situation where we end up putting an advert out and then we've managed to trip ourselves up by not approving what's in the advert, and then people there being criticism that it's not being done appropriately. And the other thing we just need to be mindful of is, whilst myself, Pat and Mary have gallantly volunteered to do the paperwork element, that doesn't necessarily mean that we've consciously put our hands up to be the recruitment panel and the ones that wade through all the CVs. I'm not saying, well, not CVs, the application ones. I'm not saying that we won't necessarily be those people, but I'm just saying we would then need to agree that separately, because that's another whole time commitment. Which maybe, to be fair, the selection panel might be dependent on how many applications we have, because if we have huge numbers and we're going to shortlist 8 candidates, then interviewing is a huge exercise. If we end up with 3 applicants, then it's a different scale of things. So we don't necessarily have to decide on the selection panel at this stage. But I just need to raise that.
Can you hear me? Is it going through? I didn't hear anything then, Rachel, at all. I was just getting strange noises on my machine, which I was unable to rectify. Can you hear me now?
You're breaking up badly, Trevor.
Yeah, I had noises when Rachel was speaking as well, but you're breaking up.
Right. Are we taking this any further? Have we talked it there? Doug, go ahead.
Let's hope you can understand me, Trevor. My point really followed on from what Rachel said, which was, we need to decide if we decide the process, and we shouldn't assume that the 3 people that volunteered for very specific tasks are going to end up doing the whole process. But I personally would rather empower that group of people to bottom the job description, send this up for comment, and maybe we can comment back by email. I certainly don't think we need to meet again, but I'd rather we also agreed tonight who the recruitment panel was, and then between the job description team and the recruitment panel, they can agree those timelines, because we really got an opportunity between Easter and the summer holidays, I'd say, to try and get this sorted. And so I'd want it to move fairly quickly, and it'd be easier if we knew who those, if there's 3 people on the recruitment panel, if we knew who those 3 were, if we knew we already know who the 3 people working on the job description are. I'd rather get that decision made tonight so that everybody can crack on with it.
Okay. Thank you for that, Doug. I'm sorry I didn't hear all of that by any means. It's a lot of background noise. But I can see Michael's got his hand up. So please have a go, Michael.
Yes. Hopefully you can hear me. I don't know what's happening with the internet. Yeah, I think we should sort of like give executive, devolve power for the job description and the the advert and those kind of things to that subcommittee of Pat, Mary and Rachel, provided they're willing to consult with us, the rest of us, before they actually send it out. Then I think we should give them authority to crack on with it, so we'd have to convene get a date for a whole new meeting when we stick the advert out. So I'm quite happy for them to just, as long as they consult with us before it's final, and then they can agree the final one when they've had the comments from us. Ignore us at their will, but give them the power to sort of like just go and act and do that. And then if we want to get the other panel sorted out tonight, this is the full committees here, isn't it? So it's going to be what some of us are here. So I see no reason why we can't agree the recruitment panel now.
Right, thank you for that. Again, I'm struggling a little bit hearing what's being said. Did you have your hand up, Rachel? Yeah, Rachel. Yeah.
I don't know, Trevor, if you want to try coming back in again. So it's quite important you hear what's said, really. But I was.
Sorry to interrupt, but could people mute when they're not speaking? That might help.
But the main thing I was going to say is that Michael said about delegating authority. We can't just delegate authority to 3 councillors, but we can delegate them to work in conjunction with the clerk to get the adverts out, and that would be the way to do it, so that it's all legit. Because the adverts can come out through the clerks,
Right.
either through Rachel or through Liz, indeed.
Yeah. Paul, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I agree. I think it makes perfect sense that we empower the group, the 3, to do that, and I say work with the clerk. And I also agree with Doug's on let's get the selection panel sorted tonight as well. So we've got the main things in place then, haven't we? The only other thing that we need to do is actually then to think about, this is probably Rachel with yourself, Mary and Pat, actual dates, etc., in terms of advert. But that's with you anyway, so that's fine. I don't think we have to finalize that tonight, but I'd certainly have no problem in setting up the selection panel tonight as well. You're on mute, Trevor. We've lost Trevor on mute. Oh.
He's gone for technical assistance somewhere.
I normally have this. I can empty the council chamber like this. It's easy. Yeah, everybody just walks out.
Yeah, I think Trevor's muted himself and can't fathom out how to unmute.
Ah, there are Kath.
We need you, Kath, to sort it out.
Still crackling, wasn't it?
Those noises are definitely at Trevor's. Aren't they?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Right. Hopefully I'm back. Is that working? Are we on? And it's gone quiet at this end. That's lovely.
Oh, good.
I apologise for missing 3-4 reports there. I just got odd words now and again. But I got the general gist of it, and it looks as if everyone is relatively content with what's been said. Was that the case?
I think Trevor, the only thing that we need to do is to agree a selection panel. I think that was what we were saying is that we'd like to appoint the selection panel in tonight's meeting. I think everything else is okay, isn't it? I think that's the only. Yeah.
Okay. Lovely. Okay, so what we're looking at, perhaps 4 people, is that where you're at?
Personally, I would go with 3, but I think 4's okay. But three would perhaps be. Go on, Michael.
Yeah.
You're on mute.
Yeah. Oh dear.
I would go with 3 and a sub.
3 and a sub, did you say?
3 and a sub, knowing how these things have gone before. And
Right.
Yeah. Do we done it? That's what I had in mind.
Yep. Good.
Now, is there anybody? I mean, I will happily be on that panel. Should it be me?
Now we've lost Trevor completely.
Well, why
I
don't
think
we?
Trevor said he wants to be on the panel.
He
which
does,
is
yeah.
The chair of the staffing committee, which I think will be
Yes.
okay. I think Rachel is due to be the chair of the staffing committee the following year, which is only in May. So I think that I will propose that Rachel is on that committee as well.
Yep, I agree.
And as difficult as I hate to sort of volunteer myself for jobs and roles, as I'm going to be the chair of the council, possibly, maybe, it's a distinct possibility coming May, I'll put myself forward for going on that committee. So we're just looking for a sub. If everyone else is on that, if everyone I've mentioned is okay with that.
Good plan. I'm happy to be a sub if nobody else wants to. If every so yeah.
Are we all okay with that?
Yeah.
Right, Rachel, will you take over as chair while Councillor Bellamy's struggling to get?
Yeah, I can do, yeah. Okay, so should we?
Can we establish if Councillor Bellamy can hear us, even if he can't speak to us? Can you hear us, Trevor?
No.
No.
He's frozen as well.
We're going to have to send him an email, I think.
He's moving again. Trevor? Trevor, if you can turn your video off, you might get better sound. We'll just see if Kath can get it working again. There we are.
I've stopped his video.
Oh, okay.
Trevor, can you hear us?
No.
Parish council to Trevor. Parish council. Trevor.
Listen, just because you can get transported up through the extractor fan, the rest of us can't.
I have a suggestion. If Trevor goes outside and gets the defibrillator and sticks it on his internet, maybe that will make the difference.
Can I suggest, I think we should probably take formal votes on both the selection panel and the subcommittee working on
Agree.
Working with the clerk to finalise job description, just so everything's neatly authorised. So can I propose that a subgroup of Mary, Pat and myself look at the job description, advert and work in conjunction, have delegated authority to work with the clerk on issuing that job description with drafts shared with all members of the committee for comment in advance of finalisation.
I'll second that.
Yep, agreed.
All in favour of that?
Yep.
Cool. Okay, good. And then can I also propose a selection panel consists of, well, 3 councillors and a backup or sub, which will be myself, Councillor Bogson and Councillor Trevor Bellamy, and the sub will be Councillor Davies.
Yeah, second.
Yeah, look at that. Okay.
Done.
So I suppose that, I mean, ideally, I know Doug's mentioned about wanting to get the appointment by the summer. I think we certainly want to do that. We ideally want, I mean, really, we want someone who can start pretty quickly as well. We don't this will be the difficulty. If we've got a qualified clerk from somewhere, they'll have a reasonable notice period, presumably. But who knows if we'll find someone like that. Because I mean, we really want someone to start in, well, May, June, ideally, but conscious it's April this week. So I think ambitious.
I think work on the basis, if we can get somebody on board in 3 months, we'd be doing really well. But if we got less than that, it would be a fantastic achievement, wouldn't it? Yeah. But, you know, who knows?
Right. Sorry, I need to put the, we'd come to the end of the agenda anyway, I think, hadn't we?
Yep.
Mary?
I was just going to ask what happens in the meantime. Do we get in an interim clerk, or how you know how do things?
Yeah, formally Liz has a month's notice period, but she's said that she's willing to hold fire on formally resigning and instigating that month notice period while we get the process up and running. And she would rather hand over. She's been very good about it. She said she'd rather hand over to the successful candidate rather than leave us in a situation where we have to recruit a locum. That said, though, I do think we should probably, given we don't know how long the process is going to take, but hopefully we can motor it along so we're ready for the summer. I think we should probably just ask Liz to confirm the process by which you can source a locum, because it must be possible, because I know you can do it when someone's poorly or something like that, can't you? So just so that we have a backup position, because I don't want Liz to feel compelled to stay for 4 months and when she she doesn't have time. So right. Sorry, Michael.
Yeah, I think Liz has shown us some very goodwill with wanting to see through and prepared to stay on to while we go through the recruitment process. I think we should I think it's sharing that goodwill back for us to crack on with it and crack on with it and go to get through it as quickly as we can. And I think putting that, that asking her to find out that process of getting a locum just in case and what have you, I think is all part of that goodwill package that, thank you very much for staying on, and we'll do our best to get someone, but don't worry if we don't, then we'll go through the locum process, because that's what we'll have to do.
Yep, agreed.
I was just thinking, actually, one of the thinking about the job adverts, and I know Doug's was saying put a kind of chatty article, but I think we can also point people towards YouTubes of our video of our meetings, because then people can actually have a genuine experience.
Yes.
Of, you could be clerking this meeting. I mean, it's a good way to see how people, whether they go, can't think of anything worse, or whether they think, oh yeah, that would be really interesting.
Well, those who are hoping for a Jackie Walker experience are going to be bitterly disappointed.
Oh, I don't know. You have to pick and choose your meetings, Pat.
Jackie Weaver.
Yeah.
Well, you would hope to think I think it's a good idea, but hopefully any candidate who's really worth their salt would do that as well, wouldn't they? But yeah, I think it's a good idea.
I think because traditionally people would maybe come in and watch a meeting, but actually it's quite people can just access it from home. Can't they?
Well, but don't forget the government are still at the moment refusing to extend the legislation, aren't they, past May? So we'll be back if that is the case, then we're back in the council meeting in the Civic after May, after the election.
Well,
So,
we'll see. I think they'll bottle it on that.
well, I hope so, because we had a discussion today that 69 councillors in the council chamber in the town hall is just one big petri dish for infection, and it's just it's just crazy. So
okay, so I think we've covered everything in the meeting. So shall we bring it to a close?
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
cheers, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Well done. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.